Water Day in the midst of an unprecedented global health emergency, which makes us all realize like never before that we are all in this together, which urges us to think globally and locally, which calls us back to the Anishinaabe Indigenous original instructions to live in harmony, balance, and peace with all creation and with one another, which compels us to change our ways. The water in the Grand Canal in Venice is clear, and so are the skies above Los Angeles. More lives were saved in China due to a 20% reduction in air pollution than were lost to the coronavirus. As the season of spring and Greta Thunberg proclaim and Indigenous knowledge and science confirm, our life-sustaining ecosystems retain powerful capacities for regeneration, but decisive action to investigate and understand and reduce our interference is crucial. We've all been learning a lot these past few days about how quickly we can change together. Let us use COVID-19 as a platform for the deep collaboration regarding multiple crises which challenge us today. The Canadian Pact and Vision for a Green New Deal was forged in 150 town hall meetings held across Canada last spring, one of them right here in Pêche. This vision invites us to think creatively and ecosystematically about climate crisis, grounding our policies, programs, and our economics in scientific data and Indigenous knowledge. We invite you to take a good look at the Green New Deal and join us in working toward a just transition for zero emissions, restored resilient ecosystems, and a society characterized by social and economic justice. Jobs will be created, no worker left behind. This is utterly pragmatic and doable, and it's also, to quote Avi Lewis, good for the soul. UN World Water Day is an international call to celebrate and protect the gift of life afforded by freshwater ecosystems, a call to provide safe water for everyone. Today, only 1 in 3 people on Earth have access to safe water. Sustainable development laws to protect water exist, but enforcement is another story. World Water Day is a call to galvanize political will to honor, protect water without compromise. This year's UN theme is water and climate change. Climate actions must include sustainable water management strategies. Climate, water, and health are inextricably linked. All our activities impinge on our ecosystem, and we are called on to reassess everything we do. Check out the UN World Water Day and Act Now websites and Facebook pages for ways that individuals and communities can make a difference. And now for our panel, after Adrian's French welcome, which will provide education about flood management, about drinking water, about our lakes, our wetlands, and our rivers. We do not own them. They give us life. We have a profound responsibility to protect them. Celebration, education, collaborative action. And now, Adrian Kiva.
Thank you, Ilse. I just wanted to mention that we got the results of the poll, and pretty much everyone is either bilingual or English only. So since our slides are bilingual, maybe we can just move on to the next step.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I don't think we need translation today. If anybody pops in and needs French, just speak up. Vous laissez un commentaire dans le chat. Just some quick housekeeping. You can ask questions. So the format of this is going to be that the panelists will speak And between each panelist, there'll be time for questions. If you can type them in the Q&A, and then we will read them out to them at the end of their presentation. And then there'll also be a general Q&A, kind of a free-for-all that all of the panelists can answer at the end. We're recording, so you can also share this with your friends and family later. And if you're having any issues with Zoom, in terms of leaving questions, you can message us through the Green New Deal Coalition La Pêche Facebook page. We'll be watching that for any questions that show up there too. That's all the housekeeping. So before I hand it over to Elizabeth Logue, the Ottawa River Keeper, we want to acknowledge that the watersheds that we're talking about today flow through unceded Anishinaabe, Algonquin Anishinaabe territory, and that this is especially important for environmental justice groups to be aware of because of the extent to which Indigenous land and water defenders are at the front line of these issues and are often hit the hardest when we fail on them. We know from the UN that up to 80% of the world's forest diversity, for example, lies within Indigenous territories, despite the fact that their communities only represent 5% of the world's population. We can also remember that many of the solutions we're talking about today are not being discovered, but rather that we're relearning them, putting them back into place, modeling off of those who have been protecting the Gatineau River, which is also known as Tanagat and Zibi, since time immemorial. So concretely, for our part at the Green New Deal, this means expanding our network to include folks at Kitigan Zibi to the north and to incorporate their agenda into ours, as well as having those conversations with and taking the lead from both Indigenous local action and climate action groups in the south, like Indigenous Solidarity Ottawa. That's everything from me. Elizabeth, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Elizabeth, I think I'm sharing your slideshow here. Am I?
Sure. Yeah, great. So, Qu'est, everyone. Good afternoon. Adrian Chimigwich for acknowledging Algonquin Anishinaabe unceded, unsurrounded territory that our watershed is on. And again, I just wanted to welcome everyone to the territory. As an Algonquin Irish heritage that I have, I like to acknowledge that every day, especially on World Water Day. So we are boiling sap right now, actually, from the water table that's giving us this beautiful day once again. So I'm happy to be and honored to have been asked by Friends of the Gatineau to be part of this panel today. What I'm going to focus on, not necessarily is not flood management, but we'll be talking about integrated watershed management and work that the Ottawa River Keeper organization has been doing and is still doing. And very grateful for Ilsa's very poetic and energizing opening and welcome as well, that reminds us that that the importance of our swimmable, drinkable, fishable water is to us, especially at this time, and how despite the fact that we're all virtually meeting here today and not in a big town hall or out by the river, together by the river, that we acknowledge the importance that this work that we continue to do is to all of us worldwide. Locally, so I'm just going to talk quickly, et je peux aussi prendre des questions en français, je vais parler plutôt en anglais. The Ottawa River Keeper organization, we've been around for almost 20 years, or close to 20 years, and focus is on protecting the Ottawa River watershed, which includes the Tanagat-Zibi River watershed, as well as the Kitchissippi and all tributaries. So it's, as we all probably know who are tuning in today, it is the second largest river in Eastern Canada. It extends almost 1,300 kilometers and is the source of drinking water for over 2 million people. So our organization works with so many others in a collaborative way to help protect that watershed from any kind of threat, as well as helping to sort of foster and convene collaboration around watershed management. So I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. I always love to put the map up because it does remind everyone of how enormous this watershed is, the reservoirs, the tributaries, the rivers and creeks that feed it. And within that watershed, I don't have the map here, but there's over 50 dams. And that some are orphan dams, some are operational dams, but those are definitely factors that we have to work with within the watershed, and Ottawa Riverkeeper tries to work with all of those partners. The next slide, I'm going to try to go, maybe I could just, if Rita, can you actually control it?
I can.
There we go. I cannot control it for some reason. I'm not clicking in the right place.
Yeah.
This is our team. Very quickly, it's funny. Since I started, it's only been about 6 months since I've been the Ottawa Riverkeeper. Very honored to be the Ottawa Riverkeeper. But here's our team out in the woods near Chelsea. I usually say we've 12 of us in the office. We're not in the office right now. We're working virtually, but it's a small team, and we are a not-for-profit. So I've had some questions, almost like I feel like Guillaume Lamoureux sometimes, where people say, what are you doing about this and what are you doing about that? Well, we are definitely working to foster this integrated watershed management, because we do recognize, as you saw with the map, that when we're looking at the Ottawa River watershed, we are looking at multi-jurisdictions all interplaying into this beautiful watershed. Quebec, Ontario, the federal side, municipalities, MRC, and conservation authorities, the OBVs, the Organisation des Bassins Versants. So there's a lot of players, and what we're wanting to foster and what we work on is to make sure that it's not just in the time of crisis, as we, during times of flood or other threats to the watershed, but that we should be communicating and sharing information at all times. So I just want to talk quickly about, in the next slide, which is the Gatineau Declaration. Back in 2015, we did work hard to bring governments together, to collaborate, to share responsibility, to acknowledge the shared responsibility of the Ottawa River watershed, based on these 4 factors that you see in front of you. Taking action on not just celebrating, as we're doing today on World Water Day, but advocating and taking action, and fostering the sort of information sharing by acknowledging that we're all working towards a clean and healthy and, trying to sustain this Ottawa River watershed for generations to come. So what we did with that Gatineau Declaration is that we brought a whole bunch of players together and ensured that they would be building relationships as the time went forward, building relationships. What that governance structure looks like, we're still working on. But what we have done is we've been able to work on developing a set of indicators that are very much integrated, acknowledging the biodiversity of the watershed, water quality, and others who monitor and report on river health. So this kind of information sharing is key to watershed health management and integrated watershed health management. So just a few weeks ago, actually, and if we'll go to the next slide, we shared our Ottawa River Health Assessment and Monitoring Program. So a list of consensus indicators that we decided on collectively with our Watershed Health Committee members and through gatherings. And so these 14 indicators, and I want to touch on these quickly, because what it means is that we have shared indicators that experts and community members and others have come together to agree upon. And by doing this, by coming together and agreeing on these indicators, we can start to gather information and benchmark and monitor the health of the Ottawa River watershed. And so despite the fact that we may not have an overall watershed council at the moment or overall committee, by doing this, we can actually have a hook to bring people together to talk about these various indicators so that people find a way to see how they can relate and take part on helping to monitor and assess the health of the watershed. It wasn't an easy undertaking, but obviously because we have so many different agencies, jurisdictions that were measuring different things, but the report that we had worked on to get to these indicators, the Ottawa River Health Report, it identifies data sources, gaps, and gives us some preliminary analysis. And we've gone from there to develop a way of gathering this information and then working together with the various jurisdictions and experts to continue to gather data and measure the health of the watershed. So if we go to the next slide, I'll just talk briefly about how we are trying to get everyone to talk together. In August, we worked with the MENACES d'Argenteuil, the MENACES de Papineau on the side of Quebec, and in Ontario, the United Counties of Prescott-Russell and Prescott-Russell. And we launched Pacte de l'Amitié. These three regions came together and with Ottawa River Keeper to sign on to a pact to work together for the health of the watershed. So that's across jurisdictions. We have Quebec and Ontario signing on. And to me, this is something that's so critical to just starting the snowball effect of people working together. The Ottawa River watershed, the Ottawa River itself, if you look at it on the map, we see this dotted line through the middle that separates the Ontario and Quebec side. And it's just so critical that we all start to recognize that our watershed, our water table, our lakes and rivers and tributaries are a shared resource by so many, not just humans, but all, and that we have to look at it in a very integrated way. So with the Pacte de l'Amitié, we're trying to slowly have a snowball effect of adding other MENACES, other municipalities, and other organizations on to work together for a shared purpose. So if you go to the next slide, I think I might skip over that one. I just want to talk a little bit about endangered species, but if we go to the next one, Rita, I just wanted to put a little, since we did say, promote this as flood management, I wanted to put a little plug in here for the Ottawa River Regulation Planning Board. Ottawa River Keeper definitely keeps an eye on flood levels. We've been looking at the Ontario's flood report from 2019 and now their flood strategy that Ontario's put out. We are working with so many different partners, and I don't want to go into all the details of the follow-ups there, but I did want to share with everybody today the website for the Ottawa River Regulation Planning Board, because I think that it's a great resource. Ottawa River Keeper checks it every day. We are monitoring, obviously, water levels, and I think I keep saying this to everyone, but it's not just in springtime that we do this. We do this all year round. We are checking to see any trends, any sort of flow trends, that type of thing. And in the next couple of slides that I'll ask Rita to pull up are actually taken from the Ottawa River Regulation Planning Board presentation, just to give people a sense of efforts that are made, sometimes more on a technical level, but there are efforts where, just like the Pacte de l'Amitié and the Gatineau Declaration, these are all pieces of sort of the collaborative methods of bringing people together around a shared purpose of a healthy and sustainable Ottawa River watershed. So on the next slide, you can see some background information about the Ottawa River Regulation Planning Board and the different levels of integrated management and communication they have across jurisdictions with Ontario, Quebec, and on the federal side. So that I think through the last two flood events that we experienced in the last couple of years, the communication side of the Ottawa River Regulation Planning Board has very much improved. So if you go to this website after this webinar, of course, you'll see how they're communicating much better than they did a few years ago. And what Ottawa Riverkeeper likes to do is use some of that data and make it more accessible to the public. And so, you know, obviously the main role of this ORPP is to ensure some better flow management within the Ottawa River Basin. That being said, you know, there's always a need for timely sharing of information, communicating that information, which is key for everyone out there to be aware of what the trends are, what the reality is. There's observed reality, and then there's also the sort of statistical side of the flow management, and they do a great job of that. So if you look at the next slide, where the reservoir management annual cycle, I like to use this slide because it does show, you know, the activities of the different reservoir management that will help throughout the annual cycle on the Ottawa River watershed. It's a vast watershed. There's various reservoirs across the north that feed down through the bassin, and you can see on the next slide, just gives you a sense of the different operators and the principal reservoirs there. So all that to say, we are working with all of these partners to, you know, bring together not just around events like flood events or different times of year, but all year round, pushing the sense of a need for integrated watershed management and how timely information sharing and open communication is really leads to the best results for all communities along the watershed. And I think that's all I really wanted to touch on today is about this really high level of what the Ottawa River Keeper organization is looking at, pulling all these strings together with regard to an integrated watershed management plan, and working across jurisdictions, working with various partners at Quebec, Ontario, different projects that also bring in our Ottawa River Watchers network. So we have a network of over 90 river watchers out there on the territory, on the watershed, that also help to gather information and share that information out. We have a pollution hotline, which ends up not being just pollution hotline, but also what people are observing out there. And I think that also gets to the, sort of timely information sharing that helps us inform decision-making at the end of the day. So that's very high level. What I wanted to kind of touch on today, knowing that we have a lot of speakers, I'm just going to leave it at that, and also available to take any questions. That's it.
Actually, Elizabeth, thank you so much. There have been some questions that were asked, so I'm going to just pass them on to you.
Okay.
One was, could you identify each of the 14 indicators and describe their qualities? Oh, that's it. That sounds like it could be a written answer.
I can write that. Yeah, I can. Actually, I'll put the link to our indicators page, because that would be taking up.
Well, if you look under questions and answers, maybe that's something that you could type in that link.
Sure, I'll do that right now.
Okay, thank you, Rita. Thank you, Adrienne. And thank you, Elizabeth, for that fantastic presentation, and for all the work that you and the Ottawa River Keepers are doing to protect the Ottawa River, which is the drinking water source for so many people. So just want to thank everybody for joining us on World Water Day. So happy World Water Day. And I'm glad that you're able to see me. Unfortunately, I can't see you, but I'm still very happy that we are able to have this conversation. So I know that Adrienne and Elizabeth have acknowledged the territory on which we live, the unceded, unsurrendered Algonquin territory, but I just want to emphasize the importance of acknowledging the land that we're on and the history of it and the current context and the need for healing. It's particularly important given we're talking about water today, and I think that any work that we do to protect water has to include Indigenous knowledge, the free, prior, informed consent of Indigenous peoples, and be based on solidarity, reciprocity, equity, and justice. So, sorry, Rita, do I have control over the screen, or do you want to just do the? Okay.
No, you should have it. Do you have it?
Oh, there. Okay, yeah. Okay. So in my presentation, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to talk about the context of water across Canada. And I want to touch on some of the key issues that we're seeing, as well as some of the threats to drinking water that we're seeing in Canada. So this map is a map that that the Council of Canadians have put together, and it's some research that I did in 2015. So it was 5 years ago, which is a number of years ago, but to my knowledge, there's no updated map like this, and so the numbers may be a little bit outdated, but I think for the most part it gives a good overview of what drinking water advisories are like across Canada. But I do want to add a few caveats to that. So how I did this research was I went on government websites and I looked at the drinking water advisories, and I was able to find drinking water advisories for quite easily for a lot of the provinces, but not all of them. And so that kind of speaks to why the numbers are so disproportionate. Like, for example, you can see that BC has a very large number of drinking water advisories. That could be because their reporting was very solid. It was very good. It was very easy to find information. You may know they have a bunch of regional health authorities, and I just went on their websites and everything was listed and updated quite often. Whereas in some places it was actually quite hard to find the information. For example, in Ontario, I had to call a number of times. The information isn't posted on a website. And so what I found was just that it really showed that there was not a cross-country standard in which people or in which governments were reporting drinking water advisories. Many of these were drinking water advisories in rural communities. And some of them, so one drinking water advisory could have been for a whole community, or it could have been for a block, like a rural block, or it could have been for a restaurant or a campground. And so there was also not really a standardization in terms of the types of drinking water advisories. So I'm just gonna, I think there's a little bit of a lag on my end when I click the slides. Okay. Rita, I'm wondering if it would be better if you or Adrienne did the slides. Because I think when I click on it.
You can just tell me when to tell us when.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. If you can just go to the next slide, that'd be great. So this is just the French numbers for the drinking water advisories. So you'll see we have the different provinces and territories listed, and then we also have the number of drinking water advisories for First Nations. So if you go to the next slide. So this is the number of drinking water advisories in First Nations from February and March of this year. And so you'll see there's 61 long-term drinking water advisories, 28 short-term drinking water advisories, and there have been 88 drinking water advisories lifted since November 2015 when the Liberal government took power. So I just want to highlight something though, that the division between the long-term and short-term drinking water advisories that came with the Trudeau government, and that's new, and in some ways that is problematic because the number of drinking water advisories on the short-term list, some of them are actually long-term or would be considered long-term. So maybe just to go back a little bit, what's considered a long-term drinking water advisory is one that is 1 year or over or has more long-standing issues based on how the government defines that. And then short-term is less than a year. But when you actually look to see which First Nations have short-term drinking advisories, you'll see that some of them actually have had drinking water advisories for a number of years. So they've been lifted and put back on and lifted and put back on. And so I don't think the division between the long-term and short-term is gives an accurate picture. And then there's also concerns about Kirigan-Zibi, for example, or some communities and First Nations like that, where Kirigan-Zibi has had a drinking water advisory for nearly 20 years. They're actually no longer on the drinking water advisory list, but that doesn't actually mean that everybody in that nation has clean drinking water. So the government has said that they've put a certain amount of money, and I think it was 5 million, though I could be mistaken, for water infrastructure in Kirigan-Zibi, and they said that that was enough and they took them off the list, but that doesn't actually mean that everybody in the community has drinking water. So it does raise concerns about who's on the list and who's off the list. Next slide. So the lack of clean water in First Nations really raises questions about water justice, who has water, who doesn't, and why. And so this is a picture of a young woman named Makasha Looking Horse, and she's from Six Nations of the Grand River. And in Six Nations, 90% of the people don't have clean drinking water. But it's also a place where Nestle is pumping from 2 wells. So this is a region in Southern Ontario that's close to Guelph. And overall in Canada, Nestle is pumping from 3 wells, 2 in Southern Ontario, near Guelph, as I mentioned, and then 1 in BC. And they own a 3rd well in Ontario, but they don't have a permit to pump from it. But the 2 permits that they had, or the 2 wells that they're pumping from, expired 3 or 4 years ago. And so 1 well expired in August of 2017, and then another well expired in July of 2016. And so it really raises the question that Nestle is pumping from these 2 wells without permits, yet 90% of the people in Six Nations don't have clean drinking water. And drought has also been a really big issue in this area. So really raises concerns about Nestle and other bottled water companies' ability to access water when certain people and in certain communities aren't able to. Okay, next slide. So I mentioned water infrastructure in First Nations communities, and I just want to talk about the broader picture about water and wastewater infrastructure in Canada. So in 2018, excuse me, in 2018, Maclean's had written an article and talked about some of the bigger threats to drinking water in Canada, and they said that inadequate infrastructure was actually the biggest threat to drinking water in Canada. It's water and wastewater. Well, water infrastructure is less of an issue in the Pêche because most people are on well water, but I just want to talk about this broadly because it could be an issue that could come up in the coming years. In 2019, there's something called the Canada Infrastructure Report Card, and they put together the numbers in terms of what's needed for different infrastructure systems across Canada. And they said you'll see on the slide, they said that of the linear assets, so that's water main and sewers, that 30% are in fair or worse condition. And then they also mentioned that climate change puts an additional strain on these infrastructure systems. In the next slide, you'll see that I just want to touch on the privatization of water and wastewater services through something called public-private partnerships. So public-private partnerships are contracts, lengthy contracts, usually about 20 to 30 years, 20 or 30 years, and it's agreement between a municipal government and a private company where they're getting the water corporation or company to build or manage or take over some part of the water or wastewater system. There's been a really big push around the world to get local governments to enter into public-private partnerships, and it's essentially a form of privatization. We've seen in communities in some places in Canada, Hamilton is one place, Moncton is another place where they had a P3, and this has resulted in loss of democracy. There are some places where municipal councillors don't even see the full contract. This was the case even with in Winnipeg with their water services, and then it just raises questions about what's in those contracts and how governments can be locked into these contracts. Also, residences see an increase in rates. They also see a decrease in services, and there are often job cuts because companies are needing to make a profit. So the former Harper government created the P3 Canada Fund. Sorry, I'm still on the previous slide that talks about the Canada Infrastructure Bank, but I just want to give a little bit of background to it. So the former government had created the P3 Canada Fund that provided funding for municipal infrastructure on the condition that the municipality enter into a P3 project if the project was over $100 million. The Trudeau government got rid of that fund, but then they created the Canada Infrastructure Bank, which is a bank to attract or secure private investment. I think they're talking somewhere along the lines of $180 billion for infrastructure, but most of it, and there isn't a clear idea of how much it's going to be, but most of it would be from private investors, meaning that these projects would go into public-private partnerships or privatization. Okay, and next slide, which is about NAFTA. So you know that there is a new NAFTA agreement that's been negotiated, and water privatization has been a concern for many years under NAFTA. You may know that Chapter 11 of NAFTA was removed so that companies can no longer, so it was a provision where companies would be able to sue governments for policies or laws or regulation on water, climate, and other standards. In the new NAFTA, there's a side letter that claims to protect water, but it only mentions water being in its natural state. So once it's bought or sold, water is no longer protected, and it must be subject to NAFTA. And then the new NAFTA doesn't protect water services from being privatized. Next slide. So in 2010, the UN passed a resolution recognizing the human rights to water and sanitation. It's actually the 10-year anniversary of that resolution this July. And so Canada fought against having, when that was happening 10 years ago, when countries were discussing it, Canada actually fought against having the right recognized by the UN, as did countries like Australia and the US and a number of other Western or wealthy countries. Since then, Canada has recognized the UN resolution, but there still needs to be a lot done in terms of implementation at the federal level with First Nations and other communities that don't have access to water, as well as implementation at other levels of government. Next slide. And so I've mentioned a number of threats already to drinking water across Canada. So drought and flooding, and as we see the climate crisis intensifying, that's an increasing concern for many communities. The lack of adequate infrastructure, which I talked about, lead poisoning. So you may have seen there was a really big investigation last fall that came out where they found that thousands of people in Canada were consuming tap water with high levels of lead that were leaching from aging or deteriorating infrastructure. And they did 12,000 tests that had been, out of the 12,000 tests since 2014, so about 5 years, they found that 33% exceeded the national safety guidelines for lead levels. So just really big concerns in terms of threats to drinking water and water and wastewater infrastructure. Bottled water I talked about in terms of Nestle, but I talked about Nestle, but there's a lot of other bottled water companies, particularly in Ontario, as well as in BC, Quebec as well. And we're at a point where we just cannot be allowing bottled water companies to bottle water for profit, and recognizing there are some communities that need to rely on bottled water, like some First Nations, but then just want to highlight that that is a band-aid solution. It's not a long-term solution, and that really needs to be addressed. Things like pollution, mining, raw sewage being dumped in waterways. I think the number is 200 billion liters of raw sewage are dumped in waterways every year. Agricultural runoff, fossil fuel projects, fracking, pipelines, Trans Mountain, and the threat that it poses to communities' drinking water is a very big and real concern. So next slide. I'm going to talk about solutions. Next few slides, I'm going to talk about solutions. So I saw there was a question about blue communities from Bob, so thank you for that question. And I'm just going to describe the project a little bit. So the Blue Communities Project is a project that was developed by the Council of Canadians and the Canadian Union of Public Employees, as well as Eau Secours in Quebec. And it's a project that adopts a water commons framework. So the idea of water as a commons is that we all have a right to water, but we also have a responsibility to water, to protect it. So, and just recognizing that water is a shared resource for all. And a way to do that is for a municipality or communities to become blue communities. So in order for a municipality to become a blue community, it passes 3 resolutions. So one is recognizing the human rights to water and sanitation. 2 is banning or phasing out the sale of bottled water in municipal facilities and at municipal events. 3 is promoting publicly financed, owned or operated water and wastewater services. And so this is a resolution to address the privatization or the public-private partnerships that we're seeing in some communities. So it's a commitment on the municipality that it wouldn't enter into a public-private partnership. And the project started in Canada, and there's I would say about 100 communities around the world. I think there's maybe about 30 or so in Canada. And so Montreal is a blue community. Vancouver just became a blue community. So it's a project that's really spreading. Los Angeles, not that long ago, became a blue community. Bern in Switzerland, a number of places in Switzerland. So it's really something that's really taken off, and people are really, the message is really resonating with municipalities. So next slide. So Bob had talked about, Bob's question was whether it would be worthwhile to explore either La Pêche or Chelsea becoming a blue community, and I would say definitely so. In the situation of La Pêche, because there is most people are on well water. And when I say privatization of wells, I don't mean private wells, and I don't mean you know, like community systems. We're more talking about companies taking over and supplying water for a profit. And so I think well, I know in the case of Pêche, it would, I think that all of these resolutions would apply. So I think it's definitely worth exploring and trying to move forward with the blue communities in these two places. Maud Barlow is scheduled to come and speak in May, but it's so hard to know what's going to happen in the next couple months that, but her plan was that she was going to come and talk about blue communities. She has this book called Whose Water Is It Anyway? And so that really focuses on how communities around the world have made their community blue. And so just to go through a few more actions that people can take is just taking action in our daily lives. And some of you may already be doing this, and they're simple actions, but like turning the tap off when you're brushing your teeth. I saw a stat just today that if you let the tap run for 5 minutes, that uses up nearly 40 liters of water. If you commit to taking 5-minute showers, that can save a lot of water. Buying goods that are less water intensive, or just buying less, or buying secondhand. But I also saw there's a stat floating around that talks about if you buy a cotton shirt, uses about 2,500 liters of water. So just some goods that we use or buy can be quite water intensive. And then Ilse had mentioned this in her opening, but there's a website, un.org/en/actnow, that you can learn about all these different tips that you can implement in your day-to-day life. Number 3 is I just want to emphasize the importance of acting in solidarity with Indigenous and water and land defenders. Yeah, I think a lot of us were following what was happening in Wet'suwet'en, and then Coastal GasLink pipeline, and then just really the need to support Indigenous nations who are really on the front lines of what's happening to waterways and to the land. And then 4th is gathering more information about water locally and increasing protections. I know that Guillaume is going to talk about water in the area, and so leave that to him, but maybe we can have a discussion about what are some things that we can do to get more information about our drinking water in this region, and then increasing protections. So that's the end of my presentation, but I guess before I stop and take questions, I do want to underscore what Ilse brought up in the introduction of that, you know, we're seeing waters run clear again in Venice. Ilse talked about the decrease in pollution in Los Angeles and China. We're seeing greenhouse gas emissions at an all-time low, and I know that there is very devastating impacts in terms of what's happening with COVID, in terms of like workers. Like there was the news about how there were 500,000 EI claims in the last week, and I would say even the last few days, and that level is unprecedented. So I do want to underscore, you know, the devastation that COVID is having, but it's also giving us time to reflect on the relationship that we've been in with the earth and with each other, and that this is a pause for many people, for us to actually think about how we are in relationship to water, and what are the different ways that we can, you know, once this is over, what are the different ways that we can restructure our communities or restructure our daily lives that would actually make and create the system change that we need to see in order to protect the waters that we rely on for drinking and other ways of life. So with that, thank you very much for listening, and I'm very eager to hear any questions or comments that you have.
We have one question, but I might suggest we save it for the end, just because we're starting to get really tight on time.
Okay.
The question actually, the question actually seems to be more for Guillaume anyways, because the question is about drinking water in Pêche. So maybe we'll let Guillaume continue. But thank you very much, Emma. That was very enlightening. I didn't realize the situation in the First Nations and so on. So thank you very much for bringing that forward. So now we have Guillaume, the mayor of La Pêche, that's going to come and talk to us about the state of drinking water in La Pêche. So Guillaume, go ahead. Are you muted, Guillaume? Yeah, you're muted, eh? Okay, let me see if I can.
Thank you.
There you go.
Hi, everyone, and I'll try it. Well, first, thank you for being here. And just to give you a bit of context, I believe someone was supposed to talk and could not. Emma called me. We had an hour discussion, and I accepted to come and speak to you to the best of my knowledge on issues related to water. I'll do so in English, if it's okay with everyone, because I believe there are unilingual English speakers today. Je m'excuse à tous les gens qui sont francophones, puis je vais peut-être vous lancer quelques blagues là, pendant les 15 minutes pour compenser. I take this moment just to remind you that in the current situation, our health is the priority. Then comes the health of our local economy. I ask you all to reflect on how you engage with our local economy. Third, information right now is key. Information sharing and sharing the right information and keeping up to date with information is everyone's responsibility. And ultimately, I think that we all need to keep faith in the fact that there will be a recovery. Things will go back to normal. Things will be different. Things will have changed. But remember that we're in a great place, and that our governments have acted so far in ways that put us in a difficult yet relatively speaking an okay situation. I'm really grateful for the reaction and the initiatives that have been taken by all the governments so far. Remember that I'm not an urbanist as well. You know, I'll come and speak to you to the best of my knowledge, and I'll do so, and you'll understand what I mean, based on the fact that a municipality's knowledge and data gathering and expertise relative to every issues is dependent on, I'd say, the problems related to this issue. So for instance, given that we were flooded in 2017 and 2019, it is normal that right now our knowledge of surface water management, flood management, drainage, there's more priority on that right now than on other issues related to water or groundwater, for instance. So let's talk first about drinking water supply in La Pêche. And I'll just go through certain numbers so you could get a sense for our situation in La Pêche. So we're a territory of 600 kilometers square, which is quite large municipality. We have 2 rivers, more than 130 lakes, big watersheds, as Elizabeth was describing earlier. A population of 8,000 and about 47, let's say approximately 4,700 buildings that have services, and by that I mean are connected to septic systems and water system. Most of them, of course, are independent. So our average density is about 13 people by kilometer square, about 8 buildings by kilometer square on average. Of course, there are greater densities in this, like typically around lakes, close to the river in the southern part of the municipality. And on average, the majority of the buildings that are not connected to sewer lines, or as we'll see, a shared well system, occupy about an acre, so 4,000 meters square on average. And I say that, and you'll see why later on. So again, of the 4,700 buildings, most of them are independently connected to a septic system and a water well. Nonetheless, we have a sewer network in Wakefield that covers under 300 buildings. And we also have a few shared groundwater networks. If we can think of La Coopérative d'eau d'Edelweiss. So it's about 130 homes and the ski resort in Edelweiss that are connected to an underground network that's supplied, if I recall well, by like these underground lakes and water sources. There's a Havre Wakefield. You know the condos in Wakefield. You have about 20 buildings of various numbers of units that are connected to a groundwater system. A couple of institutional networks that share groundwater and or sewer systems in Macham. Think around the schools and the CLSC. And then less like formal connections between buildings in various places in the municipality. We also know that there are cottages in La Pêche who do not have wells, rather are supplied through lake water. And of course, in these cases, the water is not for consumption, for drinking. It is used for cleaning. And then all of you know that a lot of us rely on the spring in Wakefield. And this is my case. Most of us have actually, like, in order to have a well or to build a well, one of the steps is to make sure, like, to have its water analyzed. This analysis is sent at the province. So all of us technically should have drinking water at home if we're connected to a well. Now, many of us choose to go to the spring water in Wakefield because, for instance, the water has high degrees of alkalinity, like it's very hard water or high levels of iron or sulfur, which makes it, you know, it's colored or it has a strong flavor. Or, so that covers I'd say the information I have about water supply, drinking water supply. If we talk about municipal regulations and jurisdictions versus the province, and very succinctly, since the adoption of the urbanism bylaw in 2003, 2004, it's now mandatory to have, you know, plans for septic systems and to have, I'd say, drilling reports provided by well experts or entrepreneurs when they come to the municipality. These, like, if you're installing a septic system, you need to work with a technologue, which is or an engineer that has an order and has to demonstrate that the system he's designing is built according to provincial standards. Also have to come and approve the installation when it is completed. Once it's completed, then the same for people who build wells. They have to report on the type of wells that they're installing and provide reports of the drilling operation. And as I said before, every owner is responsible for testing its well water when it is first installed. I was talking about municipal jurisdiction versus provincial jurisdictions. When it comes to shared, any shared network really, be it sewer lines or shared well water aqueducts, then it becomes a provincial jurisdiction. You need the authorization certificates. For example, in Havre Wakefield, when they built the system, there were tests done to demonstrate that the groundwater had enough capacity. When you start sharing systems, it becomes provincial jurisdiction. Now, when it comes to issues related to surface water and groundwater in La Pêche, you know, of course, when municipalities have more issues with, in our case, you know, think of the like flooding, drainage, road, you know, for roads or neighborhoods, municipalities will tend to develop more expertise and do more data analysis regarding these issues. To this day, generally, it is true that it is a greater priority for La Pêche to develop its expertise on surface water management. So, and I'm just going back to my note. And if you look at recent advancements with flood management, and surface water management in general, there is a Outaouais-wide project underway. It's piloted by the city of Gatineau, funded by the province of Quebec, to review current flood maps and develop flood maps in many cases throughout Outaouais. So hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, I believe, invested from the province to the city of Gatineau for doing these improvements to our knowledge of surface water management and floodplains and all that. And then for La Pêche, secondary issues are, if we think of the impact of climate change, for instance, secondary issues are drinking water supply and quality of drinking water. While there are big issues in some places in the world that rely more heavily on groundwater for big cities, while there are issues with surface water consumption in big cities where the required treatments are becoming very extensive. Generally speaking, access to and the quality of groundwater in La Pêche is not yet an issue. We are noticing that there is a trend, and it's not a trend that I could that we have started I'd say analyzing data around, but like we are seeing people converting surface wells to artesian wells, so deeper wells. Like we are seeing that happen. I think that generally speaking, new homes will build groundwater, like deep water wells, rather than surface wells, which was more of a practice traditionally. And generally speaking, it is safer. There's less chances of well contamination by surface water or wastewater. So I think that's a trend that we'll see increasing over the years. And we're also seeing that in drought periods in the summer, you're hearing, and at this point it's like an anecdotal knowledge, but we are hearing of people whose surface well go through longer periods of like people are running out of water supply, or like they can see that there's more stress on their surface well than it used to be. And then finally, if we talk about La Source de Wakefield, some of you may know that there has been, the Wakefield spring is tested by the municipality regularly. The tests are and while there has been like some drinking advisories over the time, generally speaking, the source its water is of good quality. And I'd say that there has been talks of improving the spring, maybe fixing the structure of the spring, the l'abri. Council at this point agrees. Our biggest concern is with the safe access to the spring, especially in the winter. We all recognize that there is in many other places in La Pêche a drainage issue around the spring, which causes this accumulation of ice. And it's the first thing that we've asked public service to look into. Otherwise, as you all know, and if you look at the public works planning of the last years really in the next two, you'll see huge effort put into improving our drainage systems and drainage in residential areas. and I think that it covers the various points I was ready to share with you today. As I told Emma, I'm really happy to receive questions. I may be more prepared to answer questions in general than the amount of information I was able to gather in this amount of time.
We have one question for you, Guillaume.
Yeah, and generally speaking, I'm also here to listen to the other panelists and get a sense for how the community feels about water management in general in the municipality and in the region, really. So thank you everyone.
Merci à vous. Okay, a question from me A2. What are the perchlorate levels in the public source of water in Wakefield? That's the first part. And then the second part, there's 3 parts. The second part is a request. Please publish water quality days for this same source, including perchlorates. And then the last question, why are many aquifers supplying residences on Chemin Lac Brown, Chemin Valley Vale contaminated with perchlorates? I can repeat any of that.
Yeah, I'd love, so the question is around perchlorates. I'm asking Adrian, I wasn't able to hear.
Yeah, that's correct.
Perchlorates, and then, so I don't have like immediate, like I don't have the spring analysis right now, but I agree that I don't see why these should not be public, or at least the testing that's done around the source should not be public. I mean, I could look into that. Now, I did not get the other question. I think you mentioned something about Lac Brown or Chemin, so could you repeat that?
Yes. Why are many aquifers supplying residences on Chemin Lac Brown, Chemin Valley Vale contaminated with perchlorates?
You know, I've never heard of that. I mean, I do not have this knowledge. So, I mean, I'd love to know more about that, but I'm not familiar with this at all. So basically, I understand that groundwater around Valley Verde and Lac Brown, like people have measured high levels of perchlorates in groundwater, and does it make, so is their groundwater declared like non potable? Is that what I understand?
Maybe we can make MIA2 ask the question verbally so we can better understand. I'm just going to try. Hello, is MIA2 on? Do you have a speaker to ask your question? I guess that didn't work, eh? Okay, well, maybe she'll ask.
Wait, they're still muted. I'm just unmuting them.
Oh.
No.
No. Okay, well, maybe she can ask, or that person could ask a question.
Yeah. I mean, she can send me the question at g.lamoureux@villepêche.qc.ca. My email is on the website. I mean, that's easier. Give me context as well, because I've not heard about that.
Well, thanks very much, Guillaume.
My pleasure.
That was useful. It's nice to know the state of affairs in La Pêche in terms of drinking water. And I'm glad to hear also that you're got your eye out on the stormwater and flood situation. So
yeah.
That's important. It's coming up now. So thanks very much. So now I'd like to pass the baton to Michèle Labelle, who is with ABV DSET, and she's going to talk about keeping lakes healthy.
As we saw through the previous presentations, there is more politics in a drop of water than there is microorganisms. Eh? So anyway, probably you have the same feeling than me. You need to have a feeling that you have some power on keeping the health of water around you. So that's what the next presentation will be all about. So we will talk about what the lakes are when they are healthy and what we can do for it. So I'm Michèle Labelle, I'm a biologist. I work for the ABV DSET. So who is that strange beast? Actually, we do similar work than the Ottawa River Keeper, but we are less oriented on communication like you, Elizabeth. We are more working on the field. as you can see on the next slide. Whoops. Can you see it?
Yes. Oh, well, we're still on the first slide.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, there you go. Is it full screen?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so the ABV des Sept is l'Agence des bassins versants des Sept rivières, so the watershed agency of 7 of the big rivers of the Outaouais, including the Gatineau, the Ottawa River, for which there is was 65 or 67% in Quebec, the other part in Ontario. We have also the river Collines, Blanche, Noire, Couillon, Noire, Blanche. Anyway, there is 7 of them. And so all the territories are under our supervision, if we can say it that way. We are a non-profit organization. We have been created at the beginning of the 2000 years when the government had created the politique de l'eau. And we have the mandate from the government of Quebec to produce a water plan of action that gives action and direction to all the actors in water resources, municipalities, MRCs, and other organisms. And we are a team of many biologists, fluctuates through the year, but around 6 to 8 biologists ready to go on the land. My objective today is to allow you at the end of this presentation to be able to recognize what a healthy lake would look like, and the opposite, what an unhealthy lake would look like. And then to understand more what are the impacts of our activities as humans on the health of a lake, because lakes and rivers that are in La Pêche, around which we live, we care for. We don't want to harm them, but often we don't really understand how much we can alter their quality. And then after, well, encourage the everybody around you to adopt behaviors that are respectful of the healthcare of our lakes. I'm not really mistaken to say that a lake that is healthy is without humans. The lakes, they don't need us. And if we are if we're not anywhere in the watershed, the lake will be just in its natural state. It's also a lake that is surrounded by unaltered shorelines that will do their job of filtration and buffer zone. And also a natural ecosystem composed with native species, no invasive species that we brought in. Oops, it doesn't work anymore. I'm sorry.
Michèle, do you want me to?
I think you better do it, because I don't seem to have any control.
Okay, so you just tell me when you want.
Okay, you can change to the next one, please.
Okay.
So how does a lake change? Can it change? Actually, lakes in our area were all created all around the same time after the last glaciations, when the glacier melted down and went away. All the potholes that were created by the valleys between the mountains were filled with water, where all the lakes are more or less the same age. But there is a natural process of enrichment of the water of lakes. That's a natural process that will take place over thousands of years. And we interfere by our activities by accelerating in a quite amazing speed by our contribution, the enrichment of the water of a lake. Can you pass to the next slide, please, Rita? And one more click. So the process of enrichment of lakes water, if you look on that picture, actually on the left, it's the natural enrichment process of water. So you start with a lake that is fairly new, and you add thousands of years. through thousands of years, you will see sediment that accumulate to the bottom. And you can see plants starting to grow. And as it goes through thousands and thousands of years, there is a change in the habitat. If you look on the right, and you see a lake where there is human activities around in the watershed. And there is also accumulation of sediments, but that are taking place over a few decades. So by the runoffs coming from our developments, all the release from industries, the fertilizer and the pesticides that we use on land, the erosion and sediment that has been created by our perturbation of the soil, and all the pollutions coming from septic installations and cottages are accelerating that natural process that is taking place over a few decades, and that actually are visible to, we can see now the changes happening in some lakes. Can we change to the next, please? So if you look on the top left, you have the picture of a lake that is really poor in nutriments. A lake that some people would qualify like a young lake, clear water, transparent, almost no plants, no growth, very well oxygenated with trouts in it and tuladi and the kind of dream lake. To the other opposite, you will have a lake on the right that is really rich in nutriments. So that had been enriched through time or with our input. And the nutriments feed the vegetation. And there is lots of plants growing, all those plants decomposing, going at the bottom needs oxygen to decompose. So there is a deficit in oxygen, low oxygen content. It changes the habitat. So you will have other species, other species of animals living in it. Trouts, no longer, they need lots of oxygen. You will see in that kind of plan of water, barbot, like catfish, lots of bloodsuckers, maybe some pikes, and yeah, and lots of life, but not the species that we like to have around. In the lake that is at the bottom, it's a lake that I would call in mesotroph, and that is in between two stages. So it's slowly getting more enriched, more nutrients in it. So there is plant growth, there is a bit less oxygen that is available, and the species that are in it are different than the one from the lake that is crystal clear. So you will see some bass, some perches, some crapasoles, some sunfish. So as the lake gets more rich in nutriment, the habitat changes, and the population that is living in it is changing too. Next slide, please. But how is it that we, despite the fact we care about our lakes, how is it that we can affect it? Well, in fact, every perturbation of the soil and the vegetation has eventually an impact. And if we add that to all the people that surround the lake or the rivers, it has a huge effect. So each time, like on that picture, you know, we want to have an access, so we remove the trees, we put some grass, we make it comfortable for our feet. And for the grass, well, we like to have it greener than the neighbor, so we put a little bit of fertilizer. Even the compost is not good for the lake, even if it's natural. Also, because we have roads and ditches, they gather the water in some path, they accelerate the flow of water, bring more sediment that will go to the lake. Also, each time we build a road, we build a patio to put our picnic table. We make a path with cement to go to the river, to the lake. Each time we waterproof the soil so the water cannot percolate in it. All those things are a source of more erosion. And on the top of that, we bring our boats, our fishing equipments, and we may introduce exotic invasive species like we see in some lakes, like the milfoil. Can we change slide, please? Lots of people are talking about phosphorus. Soap without phosphorus, septic system bringing phosphorus, but why is it so important? Actually, phosphorus is absolutely essential to the growth of plants and is available in a limited quantity because naturally the phosphorus will fix in the soil, at the bottom, to the sediments, to the minerals. And they are not available in the water column for the plants to grow. So each time, anytime there is a release, an input of phosphorus coming from a leaking septic installation or by some fertilizer, anytime there is an input, it has that goes in the lake, it has a direct, immediate impact, and we can see the growth. Sometimes, some people would have seen cyanobacteria blooms. Well, usually you have to look for the source of contamination of phosphorus. That's why phosphorus is so important. The source of phosphorus will be wastewater, septic installation that are not adequate, that are leaking, erosion that will bring more sediment down to the water, fertilizers, and that will enrich the lake water also in phosphorus. Almost all our activities will can cause some increase in the phosphorus content. Rita, please, can you change the slide? There is two wonderful things we have. We have natural allies that are super efficient. The first one that we should take very good care of is the shoreline. The shoreline helps by the dense root network to stabilize the shore, the soil, to keep it in place. Also, through that root system, the pollutants are filtered, are absorbed also by the plants to grow. Also, the plants that grows along the lake create shades and preserve water freshness. So if there is no increase of temperature of the water, the habitat will stay clear for the animals. Also, the shorelines prevents silting and keeps water clear. Shorelines are super important, and there is all kind of talks about it, all kind of emphasis put at the municipality and the MRC, and everybody should really pay attention to revitalizing their shorelines. The other slide, please. We have another natural ally that is super important. Whoops, a bit too fast. Can you come back, please? Okay, and they are wetlands. Wetlands, it's like the bad bees that nobody likes. It's a nest for mosquitoes, it stinks, it's ugly. Well, in fact, it's not that at all. It's a boiling site habitat for beings to live, plants, birds, animals, and it is a natural protection to the water and rivers. It's acting as a buffer zone. It is extremely important because all the pollutants that could be created by humans are stopped when they get in a wetland. They get filtered, all the nutrients they deposit to the bottom, also the sediments, and then they don't go, less are going to the lake. They also prevent flooding by acting like a sponge. The wetlands are able to absorb a huge amount of water during flooding time when there is a big hit, big storms coming up, and also to release the water when it's dry, when there is drought. wetlands are to protect. Next slide, please. And the next one, because this one is only in French. Thank you, Rita. So how can we help our lakes to stay healthy? There's lots of things we can do. Some that are more costly than the other, but they are our responsibility. The first one would be to make sure that your septic installations are up to date. Ensure that their conformity, there is no leakage, everything is emptied regularly, and make sure that everybody around you are the same. Just talk to your neighbors, ask them. We should eliminate all nutrients input from human sources, meaning, yes, the soap that we use. Now there is lots of soap that we use in our to wash our hands and things that have no phosphorus in it. We should avoid putting any fertilizer in the shoreline. We should avoid any compost. Also, we should definitively replant shorelines. We should limit the excessive tree cutting in the watershed because trees are slowing down the flow of water and retaining all the sediments. We should reduce soil waterproofing like we talked about earlier. We should also reduce erosion and runoff by directing in proper ways ditches and roads like that the water would not run faster to the lake and bringing all kind of sediments. And by the same way, reduce the sedimentation. Another thing is to prevent introduction of invasive species is to make sure your boats and your fishing equipments are clean. Wash them, inspect them to make sure there is not a little fragment of plants or a little insect that should not be there. And work around yourself, around you in your lake association, with your neighbors, with your kids, to build awareness and educate population towards the health care of lakes and rivers. It's everybody's responsibility. We all care for our lakes and rivers, and we should be all part of the solution. Next slide, please. So I like this picture. On this picture, you have a guy saying, oh no, we cannot do anything. This is a natural catastrophe. But look at the surrounding. Well, I think that in short, we have to think about our way of doing things to understand the environmental consequences of our actions, and then be more proactive and adapt and change our action to make them respectful of the environment and give the right to everyone to have the same access to water, including fish, birds, and all species. Thank you. That was it.
Thanks very much, Michèle. I love that.
You're welcome.
I love that picture. I can see, you know, with all, you know, if you imagine all the development that's going to happen around the lakes and rivers, that if we're not careful, that's what's going to happen, or that is already what's happening, I guess. Were there any questions for Michèle? I don't know.
One did just come in.
Okay.
And the question, Michèle, is what is the effect of motorboat fuel, poorly burnt or not at all, on the quality of an ecosystem of the lake? And then in brackets, engines have their exhaust underwater.
Well, whoops, I will turn this off. It's clear that the fuel is no good. If you put fuel in the water and there is fish around, they will go away or they will die. It's not compatible with water. And actually, if you could switch all 2 times motor for 4 times motor, it would be much better. And it would be excellent if you would eliminate all gasoline motors for electric motors. if you think about the pollution of the gas that is not completely consumed. That's my answer.
That's a good answer. Is that it, Adrian? Are there any more questions?
Yep, that's everything.
Okay.
Thank you.
There was a question in the chat about sharing that presentation. We can do it on the website, eh?
So just for everyone's information, I plan to put all the presentations on the FOG website, and you know, anyone could copy that link and put it on their own website as well. We could put it on the Pêche website and the Green New Deal website if required, but they will be on the FOG website for sure.
Super.
Super. Merci, Michèle.
Merci beaucoup.
Avec plaisir.
Oui, je voulais juste vous dire aussi qu'on a des biologistes dans l'équipe aussi, mais oui, ma présentation était plus sur la communication puis qu'on travaille ensemble.
Oui, c'est bon.
Oui.
Super.
Okay, so there's one last presentation. I know I'm going to be very conscious about the timing because it is 4:15 already. So I'm not going to do my whole presentation, but I will. There's a few points that I did want to make, and then I'll try to keep like a few minutes at the end for general question and answer if anyone has any questions for any of us. So I'm Rita Jain. I'm the president of Friends of the Gatineau River, and we are basically a volunteer-based organization that are the eyes, ears, and voice of the Gatineau River. And our mission statement is basically to inspire the community to work together to protect and improve the Gatineau River for future generations. And our 4 programs, basically we monitor, advocate, educate, and celebrate. So just to give you an idea, we do have to, and you know, this panel is a perfect example of all of the organizations that are involved in protecting the river and have influence. And we really do have to all work together. And so, you know, we draw on expertise from ABVDSAT, from Ottawa River Keeper. We work with the municipalities. Obviously, we're trying to inspire citizens to take action and help protect the river. So some of the things that we've done in the past, we've you know, FOG started with an introduction of trying to introduce speed limits. I'm pretty sure that people aren't aware of the speed limits on the Gatineau River, but there is a regulation, basically 10 kilometers an hour within 30 meters. And this is, you know, a lot of people don't follow this, and it causes lots of erosion. But other things that we've been involved with is, for example, the opposition of the sewage treatment plant that was going to happen a few years back. We also try to keep our ear to the ground about various projects that are happening along the river. For example, you know, there's the ski hill, Mont Cascade ski hill, that's going to be building a ski hill right in front of the river. There's new parks, municipal parks that are being proposed along the river, docks. There was discussion of boat washing stations. And so these are the kinds of things that we're trying to keep on top of. As well, last year we took the opportunity to take the mayor of Pêche out for a boat ride to talk about water issues, as well as the whole council in Cantley. So some of the other things that we're up to, we organize shoreline cleanups, we do publication, write various articles and printed and social media about issues about the river. And we sometimes go to various festivals and gatherings and set up booths to share information. And we also organize the the Gatineau River Fest. It's been going on for quite a few years. It's been in various formats, various locations, but it is a tradition that we'd like to keep going to celebrate our beautiful river. One of the things we do as well is monitor the high levels of the river. We do multiple tests on 3 occasions during the summer, and the readings are quite good. And we also have here that show the trend over the years. 2 graphs here are, the top is the top one is the average of all of our tests over time, and the bottom is the creeks, which in our based on our results are a little bit more problematic than the river itself. That's, of course, that it's collecting sediment and possibly coming through farms and so on. So, and that's the reason why. Okay, what else did I want to say about this? Yeah, so our testing that we do is, I'm just going to go back, is right currently from alcove down to the dam at various locations. And we do this in collaboration with the municipalities and a couple of private clubs, such as the Sailing Club and the Cascades Club and so on. So some of the threats, I mean, that is good news about the E. coli, but we can't keep our eyes off the ball, because there are ongoing looming threats, and they're very similar to what Michèle was talking about. It's the same thing, shoreline development. In the case of the river, that we have a lot of roads that either are parallel to the river or roads that are perpendicular, that the runoff goes directly into the river. We have issues with the motorboat speed. It really is not designed for a high-speed highway, because the waves go crashing against the shoreline, and I'm sure the municipalities can attest that they're spending a lot of money trying to fix the shoreline, especially where the roads are. And of course, we have other kinds of pollutants, such as heavy metals, pharmaceuticals, microplastics, which we aren't currently testing, but would like to. So we're doing some fundraising to be able to expand our testing. We do have on occasion, on certain locations, blue-green algae and various invasive species, such as the mussels. So what can we do about this? Oh, sorry, there's one more topic. One of the other things that we do is we do a kind of a informal shoreline survey. We do know that shoreline, as Michèle mentioned, is very important to the health of the river. And so one of the things we did is see, you know, we do have regulations all along. Every municipality has regulations about how far the shoreline should be kept natural. And in general, those 3 municipalities have regulations that it should be 15 meters. Also, boat ramps, private boat ramps are illegal. So we did do informal survey to see how it was. And yeah, there are a lot of issues. And with more development, there'll be more issues. So we do want to work with the municipalities. We've actually put in a proposal with Pêche, I hope Guillaume is listening, for the Green Fund to raise awareness with not only the waterfront owners, but also give tools to the municipal workers, employees, on how to better educate on this. So Yeah, so this slide is a little bit like Michèle's, why the shoreline is so important. This is a slide about what you can do. And again, it's very similar to if you own waterfront or are on the waterfront. Keep the shoreline natural. That means, you know, with bushes and.
Oh, Rita, you're cutting out a little bit.
Am I? Okay. Maybe I should
Yeah.
sit closer. It could be the internet as well. Yeah, to reduce the runoff, low impact docks, especially the motorboats. The motorboats are, when they speed by, they're really being hard on the shorelines. Septic systems. Also, we want to try to encourage the municipalities to minimize road salt, especially on the roads that are close to the water. And most importantly, we would like, everyone needs to be involved. Everyone has a stake in keeping our water clean. And so it's important to stay involved, informed, and vigilant. So if we do see things going on along the river, and we do get calls about, you know, people with a tractor on the riverbed and, you know, cutting down trees, and we act as soon as we can. So, so finally, I just want to say that, again, we're a group of volunteers, and we, you know, I know that a lot of people love our Gatineau River. So if you are interested in helping and participating, there's a bunch of things that we could use help with, which I've put up here. And we'd love to hear from you. You can contact us by our website. I forgot to put our email address, but it is on our website as well. So that concludes my part. Were there any questions for me? I see there's a bunch of questions here.
Yes, there's one question from Rink that Michèle, I think you wanted to answer.
Yep.
Is that for me, or that's for Michèle, right?
Yeah, go ahead, Michèle.
Okay, so the question is, some lakes in the area are in very poor shape, like Govo, for example. How urgent is it to change the lifestyle around? Well, it is so urgent, it's not even funny. In fact, if we would have been as aware of the impact that we have on the environment 60 years ago, we may have had plantings in a way that nothing would have been developed within 100 meters from the lake. But it's not the fact. The fact is that everybody is piled up along the shore, and now we have to do with where we are. So every single place should make sure to take the responsibility for having the smallest footprint they can. No, it's not too late to answer to that question, because it's clear that, for example, the lake where I live, that I won't name, we had asked the municipality to do inspection of septic installation, and they did, but there was a good 60% that were not confirmed, that were not adequate. Well, for sure, all those changes will make a difference. And no, it's not too late, because some lakes, not all lakes, have the same capacity to answer to change. Some answer faster, depending on the amount of water that is turning over. But yes, a change of a lifestyle would definitively have a positive impact. And every lake is different, every situation is different, and that's why it's so important to work with your lake association and get clearly involved with your environmental committee to find the most adequate solutions for your case, for your situation.
If I could just add to that, too, not necessarily from Ottawa Riverkeeper, but I was president of our lake association at McGregor Lake for many, many years, and Fédération des Lacs de Val-des-Monts. And that partnership with municipalities, like the Municipalité de Val-des-Monts really did a lot of work. There's so many lakes in that municipality. There's got a lot of lakes in Municipalité de la Pêche and all around that it takes community members recognizing and taking action, but not just reporting on neighbors, but actually helping to educate and communicate. But then it does take the municipality and others to actually act on that conformité de septic tanks, you know, or people cutting their lawns right to the lake. And really capacity models, sustainability and capacity models, so that you know what is the capacity of not just around a lake, but in the watershed, in the municipality. Not just artesian wells, but deep wells. It's all of that mix coming together, like you said, Guillaume, with community participation and education. And you know, knowledge is power, information is power. If we get to know each other and get to know what's going on, we can make change.
Thank you. The next question I see is probably for Guillaume. Why don't municipalities hire bylaw officers to enforce already existing rules aimed at protecting lakes and shorelines?
Oh, Guillaume is muted.
Yeah, I've unmuted him, and while that's going on, I should note that we're at 4:30 currently.
Let me
So we
see.
might want to do a sign off and then let those who want to stay.
Maybe if Guillaume could answer, I think I have to get going too.
Yeah, I was just rereading the question. So we have a bylaw officer that enforce existing rules, but I recognize that in order to enforce all existing rules, we don't have enough, you know. I mean, it's a question of capacity, I guess, you know, and like anything, it's the carrot and the stick approach. I don't believe that eventually rules is, and the stick is what has the most impact in the management of our everyday life and our behavior and our environmental responsibility. I think it's much more sensibilisation and communication and discussion, conversation, engagement. You know, could we have more inspectors? Yes. Is it the efficient way to go based on how much time it takes to go from, let's say, a complaint to a sanction? I don't believe it's the most efficient way to go. I mean, generally, our department has increased its performance, both in terms of permit emission and the management of complaints, but complaints in themselves are a huge administrative burden and huge legal costs. So there's only so much we can do at high pace, you know, when it comes to that again. If I may, I said earlier, you know, that we are the municipality, based on the recent floods, like a lot of our effort and attention was on improving our expertise and know-hows on surface water management. We're also putting it, like, we totally recognize that we have issues with lake water, and that's why we're increasing the amount of effort and support that we are giving to our lake associations. And we're also increasing the amount of work we're doing with La MENACES. And I hope that this leads to an overall improvement of the situation. And with regard to septic, I totally recognize that we have efforts to make on the inventory and the proper application of bylaws on septic and septic systems. And there's and I've said that when we prepared the 2020 budget, there's a project underway, being analyzed right now by the Green Committee. Like, it's a municipal initiative to move ahead in this direction, you know, and I don't know if it'll lead to systematic pumping. I do believe in this day and age that we have to be much more kind of precise. I think I like the measuring approach and the, you know, systematic inspection of septic systems. So anyway, more things should happen this year when it comes to managing septic systems and oversight on septic systems in La Pêche.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Guillaume. So I will be conscious about the time. It is, we are at 4:35. I don't mind staying behind and answering a few more questions, but those that may want to leave, we're going to let them leave. I just want to thank all the panelists for coming together on this, in this very strange kind of environment and mood. But it is important that I think Mother Nature has given us a chance to pause and think about what's important, and water is so important. And here we have so many aspects that are interrelated: drinking water, lakes, creeks, wetlands, rivers, watersheds. We really need to work together and keep our eye on the ball, like I said. Does anyone want to have any, Elizabeth, do you have any finishing comments?
Yeah, chimigwech for everything. My son brought me what we were boiling up. So okay. We have some syrup here. Come on over. I mean, don't come over right now, but we'll have pancakes together one day. But I think that this coming together and miigwech to FOG for making it happen. I was a bit apprehensive at first because it's too beautiful outside, but this was really good. And I think it's important maybe to keep the conversation going. Ever since I became Ottawa River Keeper, my neighbors have said, when are you going to have some kind of gathering in Wakefield and talk about what Ottawa River Keeper does with FOG and with ABV, with the municipality? So maybe, you know, I'm not totally recommending a committee, but, you know, looking at the screen right now, this Brady Bunch scene that I'm looking at, I'm thinking it would be really great to keep the conversation going, not just share our presentations and kind of try to reach each other, but actually set something in motion with World Water Day today and say, let's not just wait for these special World Water Days or UN sanctioned days, because every day is an important day on our watershed. So somehow maybe I could put together some kind of proposal of a governance. I don't want to use the word committee because we're all sometimes committed out, but some kind of coming together that we can implement, and so that we can come together in a more regular way, not just at crisis moments, not just when we're locked in our basements, but in a more sort of maybe seasonal way where we say, okay, all four directions, all four seasons, let's get together and touch base and take stock and share our resources, our know-how, our volunteer network, all of that, so that we can protect the watershed together. And I just want to do a shout out to Lauren Scholdice, who was the first water leader to really defend our spring way back when it was just on the side of the road, that the municipality now helps to test and our community members have helped to make happen. But he's been on my mind today, Lauren Scholdice.
Anyone else have some finishing thoughts?
Yes, I would like to say a word. Elizabeth, I agree 100% with you. I think that this is just a start, a beginning. We are all working in the same direction with the same goal, the same objective, and but we all have different expertise, different experiences, and we definitively should work together to have some concrete action and management of the water on the territory. We should definitively sit together around pancakes and maple syrup. Yeah, I'm all for it.
I'm in for that. Okay, so anyone else? If you,
I wouldn't mind.
okay.
Can I just make a quick proposal? So I really love the idea of some sort of committee or like follow up in this. So I would really support that. I would also want to propose something, a way in which we can gather more information about drinking water in our area. And I've talked to a few folks about this, including Guillaume as well, but like some sort of survey. Like, so there was a question in the Q&A that asked if there are any drinking water advisories in Pêche. And we don't have that information. Like the Quebec government showed 4 drinking water advisories in L'Outaouais, but we wouldn't have that information because most of the people in this area are on wells. And so if there could be some sort of survey or something done where people can, talk about their drinking water, and just so we can get a better sense of water availability and water security in the area. And maybe that's something the committee can discuss in terms of what that looks like.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good.
Am I muted right now?
No, we can hear you.
No.
Okay, good. So we have been just by emitting permits for septic systems and wells, we have been receiving information, but that information is not yet in a format that's easily analyzed. I don't know if you have had a chance to look at what Pablo Sanchez has been working on for internet coverage, for example, in La Pêche. Talk about data analysis. Unbelievable the portrait that we were able to come to when it comes to our internet situation. So similarly, my hope is that one day when we have the capacity to do so, we are able to again compile all this information and put it in a format where we're able to analyze the data that's coming to us. For example, if someone has a surface water well and comes in for a permit to get a deep water well, that is most likely because either their use increased or they've gone through longer dry periods in the summer, for example. So that could raise this is an interesting data. To this day, the data that we have is not in a format that allows for tracing these indicators. My hope is that one day it will be, and generally speaking, the municipality has moved to georeference data and proper data management in various fields. It's something that we've put a lot of effort on. So we'll get there. It's just a question of time. We're doing it step by step.
Okay. So on that note, like I said, those that need to go can go. There's a couple of, there's only actually 2 questions left, which, yeah, it has to do, one is, actually it's the same person, Denise. Why does the Gatineau municipality not hold Burgill and other developers on the Gatineau River to conform to shoreline standards? I don't know if anyone can answer that right here. All right, so on that note, I guess we're gonna wrap this up, and also we can plan to reconvene at some point, probably online if it's going to be, if this social distancing is going to last for a while. We can. I'm happy to host another one of these again.
Yeah, I can't wait to hug your hands, to shake your hands again. And I'm a hugger. I can't, some of you I can't wait to hug again. So let's be hopeful that in the months to come we'll be able to do this again.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you very much.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Also, for everyone that's still online, just go to the Friends of the Gatineau River website, and we will have the presentations there, and we will also have the recordings of these presentations there as well for those that haven't seen it. There was one person that actually wanted to speak, so I'm going to try to find her. What was her name? Do you remember Adrian? Cato. I don't know who that is. This person here. Cato. Can you hear me, Cato?
Caitlin.
Hi, it's Caitlin.
Go ahead, Caitlin.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So thank you for organizing this and figuring out a way to do this digitally. It's really appreciated.
We've had a few challenges.
It was great. It went very smoothly. I
Okay.
loved listening to all of the perspectives. I just wanted to say a couple of words on behalf of Lac Gaufreau Secours. So we are a grassroots community team of people who are trying to raise awareness around water milfoil in Lac Gaufreau Secours. Our lake is a good example of an unhealthy lake, somewhere between the crystal clear lake that Michèle pointed out, and then the very heavily, densely populated with plants lake. Our lake is infested with water milfoil, and as a community group, we're trying to spread the word about what water milfoil is, its impacts on the lake, and how people living around the lake can understand their impact and their contribution to spreading water milfoil through, their actions, whether it is through motorboat use or fishing in water milfoil beds, just to kind of bring the discussion forward. So I'm just going to type in the group chat a link to our website so that everybody can check out what we've got going on. We have some information pamphlets about how you can contribute to reducing the spread of water milfoil. It's not just in our lake, it's in many lakes in La Pêche. And we also had a freshwater caravan in the summer where we swam and paddled around the lake to bring awareness, bring the community out. And like many of you said today on the panel, it's a joint effort. It's municipal, it's scientists, it's community, lake associations, and then just general people in the community that all need to come together. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And I appreciate this time to speak about it.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else want to speak? You can actually raise your hand if you like. And if not, then we'll wrap it up. No more questions?
Thank you, Rita, for everything.
All right, thanks everyone, and go and enjoy the sun, but not too close to anyone else. And maybe we'll meet on here again soon. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.